Hello, YouTube. I think you'll be amazed to find out what fragile world we live in and how narrowly the planet had escaped its demise 6 decades ago. But it did, and I would say most people in the West do not know about it. But first, the setting. Ironically, the cosmic cradle of mankind is located in the remote Kazakhstan desert. But it was in Baikonur, the cosmodrome or spaceport and the city created among the sands, that the star trails of Soviet cosmonauts Yuri Gagarin, Alexei Leonov, and Valentina Tereshkova began. In June of 2025, the first and the largest spaceport, cosmodrome, in the world turned 70 years old. At the dawn of the space age, several options for the launch complex were considered in the USSR, in Dagestan, on the western shore of the Caspian Sea, in the Mari Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, Kazakhstan, and the Astrakhan region, where the Kapustin Yar test site was located. The first tests of rocket and missile technology took place there. It seemed easier to develop the Kapustin Yar site, but the landfill did not meet the new requirements. The main one is the creation of a large exclusion zone, so Kazakh desert was chosen. No one could have imagined that the USSR would cease to exist and the country's main cosmodrome would have to move. Now the main portal to space is opening for the Russians at the Vostochny Cosmodrome in the Amur region in the Far East. By 2030, Russia plans to launch 90% of its space launches from its own Vostochny and Plesets cosmodromes. The share of launches from Baikonur will drop from 75 to 10%. However, Baikonur will not be abandoned. Russia and Kazakhstan have agreed to implement the Bayterek space rocket complex project on the territory of Baikonur. It is being made for the Russian Soyuz 5 rocket, which will use environmentally friendly fuel, liquefied natural gas. It will be able to launch 17 tons of payload into low Earth orbit without causing damage to nature. Unlike the Proton carrier, which use toxic fuel components, Baikonur covers an area of 6,717 square kilometers. To understand the scale, imagine 2.5 cities the size of Moscow can be placed on this square. 470 kilometers of railway tracks, 1,281 kilometers of highways have been laid on Baikonur, and two airfields operate, Krayny and Yubileyny. After the launch of the first satellite, the village was named Leninsky. In 1966, the village was renamed to the city of Leninsk. The city of cosmonauts received the name Baikonur quite recently, in 1995. The decree on renaming was signed by the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev. Today, more than 10,000 Roscosmos, that would be Russian Space Agency, employees work at Baikonur. There are 4 operating launch complexes for launch vehicles at the Cosmodrome. Now, what happened? This story was told by the Soviet journalist Vladimir Gubaryov. In the 1960s and 1970s, he worked in the Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper science department, was personally acquainted with Korolev, Gagarin, and other space pioneers, and was himself a direct witness to the key events of this epic story. Many people remember that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the world was on the verge of nuclear war, but few people know what saved the planet from disaster. In October of 1962, at the Gagarin launch, Gubaryov recalled, there was a rocket that was supposed to launch the Mars 1 Martian station into space. Gubaryov was on a business trip to Baikonur at the time, preparing a report on the launch for his newspaper. Here is his story, and later I'll describe the key players in greater detail. In the Flight Control Center, several people led by Keldysh are playing Preference, a Russian card game. At this time, an urgent order from the Ministry of Defense arrives to remove the Martian rocket from the launch and place a rocket with a thermonuclear warhead aimed at New York on the launch complex or launch pad. Chertok, deputy of Korolev, is running around trying to contact Sergei Pavlovich Korolev, but a special connection has already been cut off. Keldysh calms him down. Don't worry, we will disappear faster than we can get scared, because America will strike at us first. Finally, they manage to reach Korolev in Moscow by landline. He finds Khrushchev in Central Asia and begins to convince him, you can't remove the Martian rocket. Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev does not really understand what is going on, but under pressure from Korolev gives the military an order to leave the rocket alone. Then I read that at the same time, President Kennedy was in his office discussing with his colleagues the possibility of a nuclear strike on the USSR. He was saying, we're 100 times more powerful than the Soviets and can destroy 100 cities there. But intelligence reports that they have a missile named at New York, so the game is not worth the candle. President Kennedy did not know that the rocket that scared the United States was to fly to Mars. However, its demonstration was enough to stop the Americans, and our military was stopped by Korolev. A nuclear war has been averted. This is what the Soviet journalist revealed years ago. About this journalist, Vladimir Stepanovich Gubaryov, who passed away in 2022. Well, on April 26, 1986, he was the first of the journalists at the site of the Chernobyl accident, just a few hours after the series of explosions. Impressed by what he saw, he wrote the play Sarcophagus, which was staged in 56 theaters around the world and was a huge success, especially in Japan. In the United Kingdom, the play was awarded the Laurence Olivier Theatre Award. Mstislav Vsevolovich Keldysh was a Soviet mathematician who worked as an engineer in the Soviet space program. In 1954, Keldysh, Sergei Korolev, and Mikhail Tikhonogramov submitted a letter to the Soviet government proposing development of an artificial satellite to orbit the Earth. The letter was rejected, and the group filed exaggerated Soviet newspaper articles which influenced American authorities to start a satellite program. This in turn began the effort that culminated in the USSR in the world's first satellite, Sputnik 1, on October 1957, which marked the beginning of the mankind space age. Boris Yevseyevich Chertok was a Russian engineer in the former Soviet space program, mainly working in control systems, and later he found employment in Roscosmos. Major responsibility under his guidance was primarily based on computerized control system of the Russian missiles and rocketry system, and he authored the 4-volume book Rockets and People, the definite source of information about the history of the Soviet space program. Sergei Pavlovich Korolev was the lead Soviet rocket engineer and spacecraft designer during the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union in the 1950s and 1960s, until he passed away in 1966. He invented the R-7 rocket missile, Sputnik 1, and was involved in the launching of Laika Sputnik 3, the first human-made object to make contact with another celestial body, Belka and Strelka. The first human being, Yuri Gagarin, into space was Hot 1, and the first person, Alexei Leonov, to conduct a spacewalk. Nikita Khrushchev was the Soviet leader, and President Kennedy was the president of the United States at the time. Preference is a 10-card playing trick game, card game, but bidding played by 3 or 4 players with a 32-card piquet deck. It is renowned in the card game world for its many complicated rules and insistence on strategic approaches. Popular in Russia since approximately 1830s, Preference quickly became the country's national card game. The phrase "the game is not worth the candle" means the returns from an activity or enterprise do not warrant the time, money, or effort required. So that's the story of how the war was averted back then. And it shows you again how fragile our world is and what actions can save it sometimes. That's what I wanted to let you know today. If you like my research, please kindly support it through the links you find in the description to this channel, to this video. Please kindly subscribe to my channel and like my videos. Thank you.